most basic definition of planning is simply to make a plan. City planning to develop the systems for future arrangements of a condition of a community, and a primary part of that is the regulation of proposals for construction of that city. So city planning is how to regulate to guarantee the city will be growing the best it can. That a landowner will get offers from land developers to sell their land. They'll contract with the best offer to the land developer, who will contract with a designer, which is typically a civil engineer or land surveyor, sometimes an architect, to look at the regulations, what the minimums are, and squeeze as many units on that site as possible. Typically creating a vision from a bird's eye view using pastel colors of a rendering that has not changed for the last 60 years. The developer will then submit that plan to the City Council. City Council and Planning Commission will refer to the regulations when they look at the nice little rendering, not being able to actually visualize what that will look like when built, and approve it for the next step, which is the preliminary plat. The developer then will contract with an engineer who will look at the city regulations, go through the minimums, and develop a plan that will likely be quite a bit different, because the planner originally was just to create an excitement or a rendering to get the initial momentum of the approvals. The plat itself is the geometry, the geometric, to create that subdivision. And with today's modern tools, you're looking at about 15 to 20 minutes total work to create that plat. The plat will then be represented to the City Council or Planning Commission, who are kind of wonder what happened to that nice, beautiful rendering that was first presented. Because it will meet the city regulations, they'll likely approve it. The next step is for the developer to contract the lots with builders who again look at the city minimums to place their homes. The subdivision will be born. The builder will then sell to the initial 14 families of that cul-de-sac subdivision. On average, in the United States, a home sells once every 6 years. So 6 years later, another set of families will be living in that 14-lot subdivision. 12 years later, another set. And that subdivision that took about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to create. 18 years later, the process repeats itself. 24 years later, when the development is no longer fresh and shiny and new and is starting to age, 30 years later, you've affected the living standards of quite a few people to create a plat to minimum standards. When we look at the word minimum, it's the least quantity or amount possible or allowable. This is how the entire world's pattern is created, because the minimums are going to give you the most minimal development. So the question remains, when we look at the subdivision, what attention was done to create something really special for this family? What attention was done to assure that the family had great views from within their home? There's nothing in that ordinance that has anything to do with the quality of how the home connects with the surrounding open spaces, if there's any open spaces. Did this design provide a market advantage, not just for that first sale, but every sale thereafter? Again, it's not a new subdivision that we're worried about. Is what is that neighborhood going to look like and function 30 years, 60 years, 90 years from now? Yes, there's walks, but they're too narrow, and there's really no place to walk to. The geometry you're looking at is based on an era that before computers and softwares existed. Today we have the technology and the training and the methods that can create a new era of geometry that could reduce the world's infrastructure 25%. And with all the technology, why are we still regulating and sprawling as if it's 1960? This is 2017. It's time for a change.